Hey.
So there seems to be a whole lot of people confused as to why the LA Clippers went out yesterday and traded all of Pat Beverley, Rajon Rondo, and Daniel Oturu for Eric Bledsoe. And while I completely agree that it was a strange trade that happened at a very strange time, I can tell you that the main reason behind it is simply just money. Because of the weird way that salary caps and hard caps and all that weird contracty stuff works in the NBA, which I'm not gonna pretend like I know how everything works, I just have it all spelled out to me in a very, very simple form that I'm gonna reiterate to you guys. But just understand, the Clippers are saving a whole lot of money for this year by doing this trade, plus they're also giving themselves some more options for the future. Not to mention, the LA Clippers have also just had a really, really strong offseason, even though they've had little room for error and little cap space to work with. So I also just kind of wanted to give my thoughts on what they've done so far, because again, it's been very intriguing. And so, starting off with the Eric Bledsoe trade, prior to it being done, the Clippers were one of the many teams who were over the salary cap heading into this next season, but they're also one of the few teams who had a pretty high luxury tax bill to pay. So they went and packaged Pat Beverley, who makes $14 million this season, Rajon Rondo, who will be making $7.5 million this season, and Daniel Oturu, who will be making $1.5 million this season. All of them combined will be paid around $22 million. And those three are sent to Memphis, who will be sending back starter level point guard Eric Bledsoe, who will be making $18 million for the season. So if you look at the combined totals, the Clippers are going to be saving about $4 million in cap space for the season, which also, again, I don't quite understand how it works, but this in turn saves them $30 million on their luxury tax bill. And with Steve Ballmer as the Clippers owner, he's usually very willing to open up the checkbook and pay whatever costs necessary to make this team a contender. But with the news that Kawhi Leonard's going to be out for a while and that he's most likely not going to come back until later on in the season, it's completely understandable why the Clippers might want to save some money, since they're probably not going to be huge contenders this year. And then also, by doing a 3-player for 1-player trade, it also just opens up a whole lot more options for the Clippers in the coming years. Because I think it's safe to say that Eric Bledsoe, from a talent standpoint, is an upgrade over Pat Beverley, although I do think that the gap is a lot closer than people may think. And besides the fact that Bledsoe is 2 years younger and just a bit more durable, I'd also say that he's just a better scorer and playmaker than Pat Beverley, which is something, especially the playmaking, is something that the Clippers have needed over these recent years with Kawhi and PG. So rather than be left with two aging point guards in Pat Beverley and Rajon Rondo, who are both set to hit free agency after the season is finished, the Clippers are taking a chance on Bledsoe, whose contract, again, just provides a little bit more wiggle room. Because as of now, Bledsoe still has 2 years left on his deal, which is one more than Rondo and Beverley, but the kicker is that it's only partially guaranteed. Meaning, if the Clippers end up not being satisfied with how he plays in this coming season, they can waive him before a certain deadline, and his contract will only account for $3 million on the next year's salary cap rather than the projected $19 million. And honestly, at this point, who knows what the Clippers are going to do with Bledsoe once that deadline comes up. We all know his history of struggling in the playoffs with the Milwaukee Bucks, but who knows, maybe in a new system, new team, after a year where he was kind of just thrown away in New Orleans, maybe Bledsoe still has something left in him that he can contribute to a winning team. So all in all, the two main things that come out of this trade is, one, the Clippers are going to try and save money because this year they're not going to be a contender, they're not going to be too competitive, but two, they're also just giving a chance to Eric Bledsoe to potentially be that point guard for when they get back into action once Kawhi is fully healthy again, and just see if he is good enough to be a starting point guard on a championship level team. This whole situation really reminds me of the Golden State Warriors teams that we've seen in recent years. Because they too were missing one of their star players in Klay Thompson, they knew they weren't going to be contenders, so they cycled through other potential options to play next to Steph Curry while preparing their roster for once Klay would actually return to the lineup fully healthy. Overall, I'm expecting pretty similar vibes from the Clippers for this season. Also, speaking of taking chances on players, I love the Justice Winslow signing by the LA Clippers, where they got him for a 2-year, $8 million deal. Since being drafted, Winslow has shown tons of flashes of being a quality point forward that can also excel on defense. His main issue though is that he can never stay on the court and be healthy. But hopefully he can get back up to par this offseason, because he's still only 25, has plenty of legitimate years left in this league to make an impact on a winning team, and as of now, I trust the Clippers development office to get something done with Justice Winslow. Again, health is the main issue with him. Outside that, the Clippers were able to re-sign both Reggie Jackson and Nikola Batum for 2 years, although Batum does have a player option on that second year. Because we all remember how important and crucial both those guys were to the 2021 playoff run, so very easily a great move by the Clippers to be able to re-sign them, again with the limited cap space that they had. Serge Ibaka also opted into his player option for the season, so hopefully he can also get healthy, because he was a key component that the Clippers are missing for the entirety of the postseason. He would have been very, very nice to have, seeing as Ivica Zubac had some issues with certain lineups, and just hopefully we get to see Serge Ibaka back and healthy again. Plus, I mentioned earlier how with this Bledsoe trade being a 3 players for 1, that's going to open up some roster spots for the Clippers to play with and have some fun with. Because it seems like one of the priorities for the Clippers this offseason was to get some infusion of young talent onto the roster. And for a team with very little draft capital, it was very impressive to see them come away with a draft class of Jason Preston, Keon Johnson, and Brandon Boston Jr. And again, I don't claim to be any sort of draft expert at all, so I have no idea how good these guys have a potential to be, but most of the draft Twitter people seem to be excited about these guys as prospects, so that in turn makes me excited, especially that the Clippers were able to get all of them, like I said, with very, very little draft capital. All in all, with no Kawhi Leonard on this team for the season, it's safe to say that they've fallen out of that top tier of contenders in the NBA, but do not be mistaken at all. The 2022 Clippers still have a very, very good and talented roster that should surprise a whole lot of people if they choose to doubt them in any sort of capacity. At the very least, they'll be a fun, low expectation team to watch that could even just upset some of the better teams in the league on any given night. But as I've mentioned, the Clippers have also set themselves up for the future past this season very nicely. With Kawhi Leonard re-signing this offseason to a huge extension, they now have their superstar duo in Leonard and Paul George on contract for at least the next 3 seasons, plus a player option for both of them in the 4th season. Meaning that after this bridge year, they're going to have at least 2 more years and 2 more chances with this core to go out and win a championship. Now obviously, I'm no fortune teller, I have no way of knowing what is going to happen in these coming years in the NBA, but based on what I've seen from this front office in recent years, I do really like the direction where the Clippers are going. You know, they've got 2 great superstar wings who are at the very least top 20 players in the league. They have a whole slew of supporting casts around them to just provide some buckets, some defense, a little bit of everything. Ty Lue's done a great job as head coach in his first couple of years. So because of all of those things, I very much remain a fan of this team and will continue to be intrigued by what they do in the coming, future. And if you've made it to this point in the video, then congratulations, you're a real one. Now if you enjoyed this video, maybe think about hitting the subscribe button, should be somewhere in this general direction. Or if you're not sure yet, maybe check out another video which should be in this general direction. Either way, thank you for watching.